Yes. Yep. I'll remember. Good. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Sodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pavarikacharya Satara Sada Shri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Skashri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shivasani Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Jai Radha Krishna Gopa Gopanath Shai Mukunda Radha Kunda Giri Gaurani Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Mayapur Navadip Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premanandi, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. You know that door to the Pujari room should be open, yes. Because, yeah, it's open. Yeah. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 44, Verse 3, and we'll do 4 and 5 also because they all work together. They're part of the fight between Krishna and Chanura and Balaram and Mushtika. This is the chapter entitled The Killing of Kamsa. Aratni dve aratnibhyam janubhyam chaiva januni shira shirshno raso rastvam anyonyam abhijagnatu aratni dve aratnibhyam janubhyam chaiva januni shirshno raso rastvam tav anyonyam abhijagnatu aratni dve aratnibhyam janubhyam chaiva januni shira shirshno shraso sastav anyonyam adijagnatu aratni dve aratnibhyam janubhyam jaiva januni shira shirshno raso sasthav anyonyam abhijagnahu Agnibhyam janubhyam jaiva januni shira shirshno sasthav anyonyam abhijagnatu aratni against the opponent's fists. Dve, two. Aratnibhyam, their fists. Janubhyam, their knees. Cha, eva. Cha eva, also. Januni, against the opponent's knees. Shiraha, head. Shirshna, with head. Urasa, with chest. Ura, chest. Tau, they in pairs. Anyonyam, each other. Abhijagnatu, struck. Translation and purport by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. They they each struck fists against fists, knees against knees, head against head, and chest against chest. Please repeat. They each struck fists against fists, knees against knees, head against head, and chest against chest. Purport. The word aratni in this verse may indicate the elbow as well as the fist. Thus, blows were perhaps also struck with the elbow, a technique seen today in various martial arts. So we'll continue now reading with the Atikas of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Jiva Goswami, and also Sanatana Goswami on a later verse. Aratni, this is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, aratni refers to making a fist with the exception of the little finger. So it's a fist with your finger up like this. An unusual way of making a fist. As fighting in this way is very difficult, it is not as commonly known as fighting with the full fist. But just as Krishna invented new ways of playing on the flute, so he also fought in this way with great skill. Though Chanura experienced great difficulty with this, he accepted this style to show his bravery. So Chanura did it also to show his bravery. Jiva Goswami writes, each fist of one wrestler struck the fist of his opponent. This description refers to Krishna and Chanura, Tao. They struck each other with their elbows, aratni. Sridhar Swami defines aratni as the measurement from the middle of the arm to the fist, excluding the little finger. This, however, cannot be used in fighting. Though this can also refer to using that bodily part for fighting, it is not possible to use this part of the arm for striking the opponent because the little finger is extended. Nor is such technique well known in wrestling. Thus, aratni refers to the fist, which is one of the limbs used in the measurement. Later, his limbs, including the aratni, will be mentioned in the commentary. Or aratni means the elbow, according to Vishva Prakash and Dvirupa Kosha. Text number 44. Pari Brahmana Vikshepa, Pari Rambhava Patanai, Utsarpana Pasarpanaish, Chanyonyam Pratyarudatam. Each fighter contended with his opponent by dragging him about in circles, shoving and crushing him, throwing him down, and running before and behind him. Purport. Srila Sridhar Swami explains that the word pariramba indicates crushing one's opponent with one's arms. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Jiva Goswami write, first Vishwanath, holding the opponent's hands or other limbs, each would drag the opponent here and there, paribrahmanam. They would push each other away and squeeze the opponent in their arms. They would throw each other on the ground, jump towards each other, pursue the opponent. In this way, they would counter each other's moves. And Jiva Goswami writes, Uttar Sarpana Parsharpanai means by approaching from the front and back. The aorist tense is used in this verb, in the verb prati yarudatam. The addition of the letter N is poetic license. Each tried to stop the other. Text 45. Uttapanayar unayanaish chalanai stapanairapi parasparam jigishat shantav apachakratur atmana. Forcefully lifting and carrying each other, pushing each other away and holding each other down. The fighters hurt even their own bodies in their great eagerness for victory. Purport. Srila Jiva Goswami explains that although Krishna and Balaram did not, of course, harm themselves, it appeared that way to Chanura, Mustika, and others of mundane vision. In other words, the lords were fully absorbed in the pastimes of being wrestlers. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, they would fix the feet and knees firmly and lift the opponent who had fallen on the ground. Using their hands, they would carry the opponent around. When the opponent had a hold on the throat, he would throw him off. At other times, they would fix themselves firmly so that the opponent could not move them. In this way, they injured their own bodies. Though the Lord's body cannot be injured at all, it is described in this way according to the impression of the spectators. Jiva Goswami writes very short tika. Krishna was not actually injured, but acted in this way in response to Chanura's injuries. And Sanatana Goswami writes, Krishna was not actually injured, but acted in this way in response to Chanura's injuries. Or Shukadev describes it in this way, because of lamentation in praying. Or it only refers to Chanura being injured in fighting with Krishna. Om Jnana Timarandasya Gyanan Gyanan Shalakaya Chakshu Unmitangena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamin Itanamani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Bacharani Nirvasesa Shunyavadi Prasachadishtarni Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. The fight is on. And here we have a blow-by-blow description of the fight. And it's an interesting fight because Krishna, he introduces new ways of fighting as he's introduced new ways of playing the flute. To make a fist with your little finger out, it's seemingly incongruous because how can you fight with you're going to break your little finger. But this is how Krishna is fighting. And it's described by the acharyas that maybe the description isn't exactly that because how can you fight like that? But Krishna is fighting like that. And Chanura, he can't really get it, but he's fighting like that because he's trying to be chivalrous and trying to do the same thing. So we have this fight, and it's interesting because it's fist against fists and knees against knees and head against head, chest against chest. This is quite a grueling fight. I mean, imagine if you had boxers bare-knuckled banging their fists against each other. This is very strong. It's violent. And Krishna, he appears to be just a teenage boy, a young boy, fighting against this guy who's like, some NFL linebacker, huge man, big, strong, with arms, like thunderbolts. But Krishna, as we hear in the description, he's not only fighting well, but he's holding his own, and he is having a great time because this is a pastime. It's very important to note that Krishna, he didn't have to fight. He could have simply dismissed them in a moment because, after all, he's the Supreme Lord, and these are insignificant jiva souls. They are a tiny portion of the portion of Krishna. So we don't have great power compared to Krishna. Our powers are so limited. So Krishna, in a moment, could finish them off. I mean, even in a moment, one is finished off by some mundane thing like a gun or a bomb. But here Krishna is playing, like he played as Varahadev with Hiranyaksha. He played with them. He wanted to sport with him. It was fun. So these activities for Krishna, they're meant for his pleasure, and they're meant for our pleasure in reading about this, because in this way we develop an attraction for hearing about him. After all, if God was simply always do everything in some sort of almighty way, and he knew everything was going to happen a certain way, it would be very dull for him and dull for those who are with him. And Krishna doesn't want to live a dull life. He wants to live a life of excitement and love and adventure. And this makes life worth living, not that we live a dull existence. And in many ways, the understanding of other spiritual paths is dull. Dull like the Mayavadis, it's dull. It's just simply oneness. And even in the conception of Western religions, God is all powerful, and he knows everything. So it's almost like, he's just like some kind of commander at a control board or something like that, and he just knows everything, moves everything, and it'd be pretty boring. It has no interaction. There's no understanding of relationship. Relationship is there, but it is distant. And Krishna, or God in their understanding, is a distant God, not to be seen or understood by any human being. But in our case, we have the good fortune of being able to hear from the great personalities like Jiva Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and Srila Prabhupada. And they're giving us a very vivid description of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in the last verse, number 5, that I read, there's an important point here. The verse says that forcefully lifting each other, pushing each other away, and holding each other down, the fighters hurt even their own bodies in their great eagerness for victory. And it's mentioned by all the acharyas and in the purport also that, of course, Krishna could not hurt himself because Krishna's body cannot be injured. But it's described this way because that's the impression that Chanura had, because he's fighting Krishna and Krishna is exhibiting this. And it's described this way because this is the mundane vision of the wrestlers of fighting with Krishna. But it's not just mundane vision, because we also have a parallel with this with devotees, as we will see. Sometimes devotees, they have a relationship with Krishna in such a way that it appears that he's been defeated. It appears that he's been hurt. It appears that he's been defeated in love. It appears that Krishna has some sort of subordinate position to the devotee. And here it appears that with this demon, Krishna's fighting like this all-out fight rather than simply dispatching him. In fact, when we go back to the story of Lord Varaha, the demigods get a little worried because they don't understand. They say, just dispatch him quickly. Get rid of him right now, because they're thinking, well, maybe he's not, maybe this is a tough battle. It's never a tough battle for the Supreme Lord. So this is bewildering to everyone. That's why, coming from a tradition of Protestant Christianity, I know that that tradition would say, well, why does God have to do all this? He knows everything. He's complete in himself. Boom, boom, boom. He doesn't have to do any of this, because they don't understand that God wants to enjoy. They think that somehow God is a passive, mighty force. But Krishna is a dynamic person, and he has a personality. That's why we always say not just God, but the personality of Godhead, or that person who is the supreme personality of Godhead, the supreme personality in the spiritual world. So let's look now at Srimad Bhagavatam, some earlier verses. And these verses, first from the teachings of Queen Kunti, and these are famous verses. I will just read the English because of time. From the prayers of Queen Kunti, she speaks, "O Lord, no one can understand your transcendental pastimes, which appear to be human and are so misleading. You have no specific object of favor, nor do you have any object of envy. People only imagine that you are partial." This is from Canto 1, Chapter 8, and it's verse number 29. Prabhupada writes in the very beginning of the purport, "The Lord's mercy upon the fallen souls is equally distributed. He has no one as the specific object of hostility. The very conception of the personality of Godhead as a human being is misleading. His pastimes appear to be exactly like a human being's, but actually they are transcendental and without any tinge of material contamination." So Krishna is fighting these wrestlers without any feeling of vicious anger. I'm going to get you. I mean, he's angry in a transcendental way. And he's not showing, sometimes people would say, oh, he's showing, the misinformed will say, he's showing some partiality to the devotees. Pritranaya sadhunam vinaschaya chaduskritam. He vanquishes the demons and he protects the devotees. But in the case of the demons like Chanura and Mustika, Krishna and Balaram are giving them the ultimate mercy. They're getting killed by them. And being killed by Krishna is a great benediction. It really means that, deep down inside, that Chanura is a demon, but he's a special demon. Because demons who get killed by the Supreme Lord have a relationship with the Lord. Sometimes, like Jai and Vijay, it's a really special relationship. We should understand that Chanura and Mustika, they're just not, thugs off the street, but they're personalities who have a relationship with Krishna, but that relationship is in the form of a demon, because Krishna wants to fight, and Krishna wants to present wonderful pastimes for us to relish, and he wants to relish these pastimes. So Prabhupada writes in the second paragraph of this purport a little more about Krishna's merciful behavior upon the fallen souls of this material world, so that we can become attracted to him, so that we can want to be with him, because ultimately we can't be with Krishna unless we really want to be. And we're here in the material world because we have a desire to be, we want some of my time. And my time is permanent, practically speaking. It goes on and on and on for practically an eternity as we stay conditioned in this material world. Krishna he's ever inviting us to join with him in pastimes of love. When the Lord descends on this material world, by his all-merciful energy, he plays like a human being, and therefore it appears that the Lord is partial to his devotees only, but that is not a fact. Despite such apparent manifestation of partiality, his mercy is equally distributed. In other words, the demons get equal mercy. They get the mercy the only way they can, to be killed by him. In the battlefield of Kurukshetra, all persons who died in the fight before the presence of the Lord got salvation without the necessary qualifications, because death before the presence of the Lord purifies the passing soul from the effects of all sins, and therefore the dying man gets a place somewhere in the transcendental abode. So how fortunate Mustika and Chanura are, because they're not just seeing Krishna and dying, but they're actually being touched by Krishna and dying. I mean, they're being slapped around, they're being punched, and they're providing Krishna some pleasure by punching back, because Krishna doesn't just want to punch a punching bag, he wants to fight someone who can fight. Somehow or other, if someone puts himself himself open in the sun rays, he is sure to get the requisite benefit both by heat and by ultraviolet rays. So the Chanura and Mustika are putting themselves directly in the sun here, and they're getting benefit. Therefore, the conclusion is that the Lord is never partial. It is wrong for people in general to think of him as partial. So he's completely merciful to everyone. Now, there's other examples of Krishna throughout the Bhagavatam, of him acting in ways in which he appears to be um, uh, in a conditioned state, but he's not, because he's pure and he's absolutely spiritual. One of the best examples given is his fighting with Bhishmadev. Now, this fighting with Bhishmadev is qualitatively different than the fighting of Chernura and Mushtika, because Chernura and Mushtika are actually demons, and Bhishmadev is a pure devotee. But Bhishmadev, he wants to fight with Krishna in order to experience rasa, and that rasa is chivalry. That rasa also has some ghastliness to it, because warfare is ghastly. But warfare, in the case of a kshatriya, who revel in the chivalry and the blood and the and the violence of battle, this is something very glorious. So Krishna is reciprocating with another warrior as a warrior, and this becomes a source of bliss for Krishna and the devotee. From the first canto, 9th chapter, verses 37 and 38, just the English again. Fulfilling my desire and sacrificing his own promise, he got down from the chariot, took up its wheel, and ran towards me hurriedly, just as a lion goes to kill an elephant. He even dropped his outer garment on the way. So Bhishmadev was accused by Duryodhana of being soft on the Pandavas, because he had a soft spot for them. So Bhishmadev said, well, I'll show you. Tomorrow I'll fight in such a way that that I will kill Arjuna, or Krishna will have to break his vow, because Krishna vowed not to fight in the war. He was going to take sides. He was just going to drive the chariot of Arjuna. So he fights in such a way that Arjuna is in mortal danger. And Krishna, rather than be the one who always keeps his word, he rather be known as Bhaktavatsal, as the dear protector and server, Dina Dayal, the protector of the devotee. So Bhaktavatsal, he protects Arjuna by fighting, by giving up his neutral position, taking the chariot wheel, which is sort of like a chakra, and running towards Bhishmadev in a way in which he's completely ferocious. And there's a picture in some of the older books, maybe in some of the new ones too, where Krishna is running and he has this. He looks a little disheveled and his cloth is like flowing, but this is bliss for Bhishmadev because he's seeing Krishna in this chivalrous mood. And then the next verse, may he, Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who awards salvation, be my ultimate destination. On the battlefield, he charged me as if angry because of the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows. His shield was scattered and his body was smeared with blood due to the wounds. Prabhupada writes, the dealings of Lord Krishna and Bhishmadev on the battlefield of Kurukshetra are interesting because the activities of Lord Sri Krishna appeared to be partial to Arjuna and at enmity with Bhishmadev. But factually, all this was especially meant to show special favor to Bhishmadev, a great devotee of the Lord. So no one can understand this from the surface. It looks like he's protecting Arjuna, his friend, and he's going to make sure that Bhishmadev cannot kill his friend. But actually, he's showing even more mercy to Bhishmadev because he knows that Bhishmadev wants to see him in this chivalrous mood. So there's only one way to do that, is to actually fight. The astounding feature of such dealings is that a devotee can please the Lord by playing the part of an enemy. The Lord, being absolute, can accept service from his pure devotee even in the garb of an enemy. The Supreme Lord cannot have any enemy, nor can a so-called enemy harm him, because he is Ajita, or unconquerable. But still he takes pleasure when his pure devotee beats him like an enemy or rebukes him from a superior position, although no one can be superior to the Lord. So in this case, Bhishmadev is firing arrows and they're hitting Krishna. And Chanura and Mustika, although they're actually really demons, they're actually hitting. And appears to those who, especially with mundane vision, that Krishna is being hurt. But actually, Krishna's pastime is of being hurt, because Krishna can never be hurt. Those who have no information of pure devotional service cannot penetrate into the mystery of such dealings. Bhishma Dev played the part of a valiant warrior, and he purposely pierced the body of the Lord so that to the common eyes it appeared that the Lord was wounded. But factually, all this was to bewilder the non-devotees. The all-spiritual body cannot be wounded, and a devotee cannot become the enemy of the Lord. This is the way of exchanging transcendental rasa, or relations between the Lord and the servitor. By such dealings, both the Lord and the devotee become glorified in their respective positions. The Lord was so angry that Arjuna Arjuna tried to stop him, but he couldn't stop the Lord from attacking Bhishma. Apparently, his determination was to kill Bhishma, but factually it was to please him as a great devotee of the Lord. The Lord is undoubtedly the deliverer of all conditioned souls. The impersonalists desire salvation from him, and he always awards them according to their aspiration. But here, Bhishma Dev aspires to see the Lord in his personal feature. All pure devotees aspire for this. Now, even Chanura and Mustika, who weren't actually aspiring for this, they're more fortunate than the impersonalist Mayavadis, because they have direct connection with the Lord. They're going to be killed by the Lord. The Mayavadi avoids the Lord at all costs. So the question becomes, this is a very high understanding. No one, so many spiritualists and religious people, they can't understand this sort of give and take between the Krishna and his devotee. So how can we understand? I mean, personally, I'm not really very advanced. I didn't come to Krishna consciousness on a very high platform. But there is a possibility of this, and it's right there before us. We simply have to follow a process by which we become purified, and that we can actually enter into these understandings. Krishna speaks this directly to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, and two verses are very important here. They're verses 18, 54, and 55. Again, time-wise, I'm going to read just the English. This is 54. One who is thus transcendently situated. Actually, I want to read this Sanskrit sport. Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Nasochati Nakankshati Sama Sarveshu Bhuteshu Mad Bhaktim Labate Param. One who is thus transcendently situated at once realizes Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. He's equally disposed towards every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service to me. So it's Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma. That when one is in this Brahma Bhuta state, or being one with the Absolute, one with the Absolute for those in rasa means in relationship, becomes prasanatma, fully joyful. So the next verse speaks, Bhakyamam abhijanati yavam yazchasmi tatvataha tatomam tatvato gyatva vishate tadanantaram. One can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service. And when one is in full consciousness of me by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. So, how to become Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma? It's Bhakyamam Abhijanati. By pure devotional service, one can know Krishna. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and his plenary portions cannot be understood by mental speculation nor by the non-devotees. If anyone wants to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he has to take to pure devotional service under the guidance of a pure devotee. In other words, we cannot understand Krishna by simply studying and having academic knowledge. You can go to college and study the Srimad Bhagavatam somewhere, I'm sure. But you're not going to study it in a way in which you understand Krishna, because it can only be understood from the pure devotee who experiences Srimad Bhagavatam, not from a professor who's going to give some relative explanation of the book. Prabhupada writes, after attainment of the Brahma Bhuta stage of freedom from material conceptions, devotional service begins by one's hearing about the Lord. When one hears about the Supreme Lord, automatically the Brahma Bhuta stage develops and material contamination, greediness, and lust for sense enjoyment disappears. Now, automatically means it's going to happen as we do it, as we hear and chant. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smarnam. Now, this Vishnu Smarnam happens down the road in devotional service as we become purified. But it happens automatically if we actually follow the process of hearing and chanting. And chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And chanting purely. Because by chanting purely, we actually have that's the key that opens the door to real Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada saying this, that Krishna consciousness really begins at the Brahma Bhuta stage, which is Nishta, which is that stage of steadiness, of being actually in a position where we are fixed in Krishna consciousness. As lust and desires disappear from the heart of the devotee, he becomes more attached to the service of the Lord, and by such attachment, he becomes free from material contamination. In that state of life, he can understand the Supreme Lord. So Krishna's pastimes can be understood by us as we become purified. As we're impure, we can't understand. In other words, in the beginning, if we can't understand these pastimes because they're inconceivable, what our attitude should be is not that, oh, I can't understand it, therefore it's not really happening, it's something made up. It should be, I can't understand it because I'm not purified to understand it, and therefore I have to become purified. And I'm being purified because I'm following my Gurudev, who's teaching me how to become purified so that I can enter into these pastimes. With this attitude, even if we haven't entered into the higher stages of bhakti, we are on the threshold of bhakti and properly situated. The Vedanta Sutra confirms this. Aprayanat tatrapi hi drishtam. This means that after liberation, the process of devotional service continues. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, real devotional liberation is defined as the reinstatement of the living entity in his own identity, his own constitutional position. The constitutional position is already explained. Every living entity is a part and parcel, fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, his constitutional position is to serve. After liberation, this service is never stopped. Actual liberation is getting free from the misconceptions of life. So this Krishna consciousness is meant to bring us to our constitutional position. This is unknown to the vast majority of anybody, even on a spiritual path. The constitutional position that we have, which is the positive understanding of you're not your body. We say you're not your body, but what are we? We have a position with Krishna eternally, and that position is a position of serving him with love. So that is what we're here for, to hear the Bhagavatam, to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, to associate with devotees, and to become eligible to actually understand these pastimes. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Real devotional liberation is defined as the reinstatement of the living entity in his own identity, his own constitutional position, as discovering who we are, or going back to who we are and what we are. Brilliant Prabhupada's comments.
Adipurusham Aham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Aham Bhajami Govindam
Adipurusha Aham Bhajami Enam Tanvanda Maravindanalaya Tartam Bhagavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundaratam Kandar Bhagavad Vidamaniya Vishesha Shobha
Govindam Adipurusham Aham Bhajami
Govinda Adipurusha Namah Bhajami Govinda Adipurusha Namah Bhajami Andaniya Sakale Priya Priti Manti Vasyan Vipa Vikayanti Jira Premanti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vikasya Govinda
Adipurusham Aham Bhajami
Govinda Adipurusha Namah Bhajami Govinda Adipurusha Namah Bhajami Govinda Adipurusha Namah Bhajami Govinda. Amao Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurabani Pracharine Devasesha Sanyavadi Vastacha Dasatare Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasvati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasvati
Gora Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhari Vasvati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Chaitanya Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Golokananda Radha Golokananda Jaya Radha Golokananda Radha Golokananda Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe, Jaya Radhe. Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. Jaya.
Jivanam Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam Pradeepanam Pranamrita Swadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Namakari Mahudani Satsarapsam Adrishita Vipa Bhagavan Mamapi Durdaiva Midrishami Hajjani Nanuraga Trinadapi Sunichena Tarora Pi Sahishuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Najanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitam Va Jagadisha Kamaye Mama Janmani Janmani Ishvare Bhavatad Bhaktir Hoitaki Twahi Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Babam Buddha Kripayata Vapatat Pankaja Sita Duli Sadrushim Vichintaya Ninayanam Galashuda Daraya Varanam Gad Gada Ridaya Gira Pulakarnishitam Vapukada Tavanama Grahane Bhavishyati Yugayatam Namishena Chakshusha Prabhashayatam Shunayatam Jagat Sarvam Govindam Virahename Ashlishyava Padaratam Vanastu Mam Adarshanam Marmahata Karotuva Yata Tatava Vinatolam Batomat Prananatastusa Evanapara. Victory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life, of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. Oh, my Lord, congregational chanting of your body, render all benediction to living beings. And thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you've invested all your transcendental energies. They're not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. Oh, my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names. But I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy names of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw on the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Oh, Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want the devotional service birth after birth. O Son of Mars Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I have fallen in the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. Oh, my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs of my body stand and end at the recitation of your name? Oh, Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so even if he handles me roughly by his embrace or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Shri Shri Jai.